Jonathan Swift, he's probably one of the top 6, 7 authors that we're going to deal with. You throw in Shakespeare and Chaucer and Orwell and those guys. But this guy probably is a little bit more famous than Orwell. The main literary element that we focus on with regards to Swift and that he's associated with is the term satire. And you've probably heard it a lot. When you think satire, you just might think, oh, things are funny. Okay? Well, that's humor. Satire, in a way, really, the point is it brings out the faults of something, a society, whatever, and usually it does it with the cliche is tongue-in-cheek, usually kind of not openly looking for jokes and laughter, but instead making you chuckle a little bit. Nowadays, Jon Stewart and Stephen Colbert, boom, those guys are satires. There's a lot of political columnists and such around the, in print and such, and some TV as well. But those are the, for your age and such, you'd probably be more familiar with those individuals. And if you've seen their show, they're smiling and having a good time here and there. But when they're delivering the news, it's pretty, right? It's pretty straight faced. Okay. Are they making up news? A lot of times they're taking the news that's happening, and they're taking actual video clips of congressional conferences and using the exact words that people say and making it interesting, making it relevant. And what they're doing, they're showing you the faults of these people and the faults of, the government and the faults of how wrong this country is at times. But they're doing it in a way that's poking fun at those individuals. That's what's satirical, and that's what's silly. Okay? So when you think of satire this particular semester, we want you to think of this. Just like when we dealt with, I think I spoke about Swift and satire back when we talked about Chaucer with characterization. Remember all the details about the person? Indirect characterization, what they are, how they act, what they look like, that type of stuff. Here, when you think of satire, you need to think of Swift and this Enlightenment time period. He's an Irish writer. As you see in some of the background about him, that a lot of people, thought that, he hated mankind. He hated humankind because of, how kind of dark some of his stuff was. Okay? We're going to read a piece, probably his most famous, both of his most famous pieces, in the next few days and such. But however, his deep love for humanity that caused him to criticize it, and his dream was to cure the ills of his age through humor. And so through his words, he was hoping to cure the problems and the faults that he was pointing out in his writing. But everybody on the outside is like, man, look how much you hate Ireland. Look how much you hate this. No, I love Ireland. Well, then why are you dogging on us like this? Well, I'm pointing out the faults, but I'm doing it funny. You're not getting it. You have no sense of humor. Okay? But this particular piece, Ireland is being, crushed, not with the military, but with their economy during this time period. A lot of the issues you see here, we're kind of still dealing with currently, present day. We had bigger issues, stock market crash and the depression, that type of thing, in the last 100 years. But if you look on the building background on 565 for a modest proposal, he's drawing attention to economic conditions in Ireland in the early 1700s. At this point, Ireland was ruled by England. Because remember, Malcolm went to England, so Donald Bain went to Ireland. Okay? Now that was, 700 years earlier, but it's just an island. It's right next door to it, so geographically it's very close. Ireland was ruled by England, and English laws limited Ireland's ability to trade with other companies. Ireland could buy certain products only from England only at high prices. English landlords who owned much of Ireland's best land charged exorbitant rents. Do you see how England is putting a big strain and a crunch on Ireland? You can only import from us, and we're going to really charge you through the nose. Okay? And so they have a lot of problems. They don't have much money, and the money they do, is it staying in their economy? Is it staying in Ireland to help build things and stuff? No, the money's going to England. And the landlords who own land over here, they're charging big rent. Well, is that money staying here? No, that money's going back to England. And so they have problems, with hunger, with poverty, with overcrowding. Okay, there's just too many babies coming out, and we're just, there's no room to put them, and nobody can feed them and take care of them, and they're, every problem that comes with, an impoverished country that they're dealing with. Okay, is England the sole person to blame? Well, they're kind of in charge, so you kind of always blame the manager or coach, right? Aren't they the one that gets fired? Okay, but a lot of his resentment is directed towards England. Okay, now he could write an essay, and here's where we need to focus. He could write an essay that just says, "England, you stink, and here's why." Boom, 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 boom. List 10 things, and people would read it. People would probably agree with it and move on. There's no writing there. Is there? Just listing something? That's not writing. That's not satire. What he is going to do is he's going to list, these are the problems in England, in Ireland, caused by England, and here's how we can fix it. And my proposal, my modest proposal, which means it's not the best, okay, even though he'll argue in here that my proposal is the best. So even the title is satirical in nature. Because it's a modest proposal. Take it for what you will. It's a modest. We'll just put it out there, see what happens, see what sticks. Okay? But his situation to fix the economy, to fix the hungry, to fix the overcrowding, to get money into our economy, to have an import-export business. Does anybody have any idea what that is? Have you heard it before, people talking about it in other semesters? They're going to eat babies. Okay? Now, it's satirical. Okay? It's not meant to be serious. But what he's showing you is with this absurd notion, we can solve all these problems. Okay? And it's through this humor and through this satire that the real problems, the real issues come to the forefront. And that's what satire is, and that's what satire does nowadays. And this is probably the most famous piece of satire, in the literary world. Any textbook that says satire, boom, Swift is right there, especially this. Okay? He's a mathematician. He likes numbers as well, an economist. There we go. He's going to break it down for you. By the end of this, you guys should eat your babies. Your country will be fixed. If not completely fixed, on the road to recovery. Because wouldn't it fix overcrowding? Wouldn't it fix the hungry? And the poor, guess what they can do? They're a baby factory. They can, like cattle, pigs. There you go. Nurture it for a year, sell it, make some money. Now, that seems crazy, and that seems wrong. But that's important to grasp onto those notions of that this is a satire. And look at how this absurd idea, how at the end of it, it could make a little bit of sense. Okay? And when he breaks down numbers, he's making his point. He's doing a literary textual evidence analysis that I tell you guys to do. He has an opinion, and he's using facts to back it up. And he's using these numbers, okay, to back it up and look at all the problems that he's getting fixed. Modest proposal, Jonathan Swift. In setting this up, we spoke about the element of satire, and you've heard me mention it a lot just in the limited exposure to this particular unit. If you have to think satire on the final exam, you want to come back to this particular piece to think about. Okay, this particular piece where he says, "Let's eat babies," and that's just crazy and outlandish. But yet, I hope you guys finished reading it. You saw that, wow, this makes a lot of sense. And again, towards the end, and we'll get there, when he says, I don't want to hear about, taxing absentee landowners. I don't want to hear about other proposals where we do this or do this. As he mentions those things, we'll see that, wow, those are like realistic, non-baby eating solutions to our problem. But we're not doing it. And so by coming up with this absurd situation, it's really bringing to light opportunities for improvement for their country. Okay? And so that's why it's important. That's why it can be so outlandish and just crazy to some degree, even though it kind of makes sense once we get going with it. Some of the language in here is quite interesting. The voice, the word choice that he picked. Ladies referred to as what? Livestock. Breeders. Ladies, do you approve of that connotation? I wouldn't think so. But you're referred to as breeders. We're taking the human element out of it, and yes, we're eating human babies, but we are focusing on just man, woman, and let's see if we can, the numbers of it, how we can break this down. He starts to go into the idea there, on page 567. It says that it is true a child, like right around the middle, it is true a child just dropped from its dam may be supported by her milk for a solar year with little or other nourishment. So the point being, it's not very expensive to take care of a baby in that first year, as long as, they didn't have formula and stuff like we do now, so you can skip it. It was mandatory. Breastfeed, done, boom. So for a year, it's pretty cheap. But after that, they become a burden on the family, and if the family can't take care of them, a burden on society. Okay? And that's where he goes into those greater details about poverty and children. The only good they can be, if they're gifted, is a pickpocket on the street. That's only rare cases. And so really there's no contribution to society. And you have to put in all this money and time on those children. And why? You don't even have that money to spend in the first place. So sell them. Make some money. Make a profit. Sounds like a good idea. Sounds like a great idea. There is likewise another great advantage in my scheme, that it will prevent those voluntary abortions and that horrid practice of women murdering their bastard children, alas, too frequent among us, sacrificing the poor, innocent babes. So people aren't going to go and have abortions because that's almost like burning money. Okay? And remember, keep this in your mind that this is supposed to be outlandish and crazy, but it's addressing a problem. And so abortions must be a problem back then too. But people aren't going to go and do crazy things and harm themselves or harm their babies, because why would you want to be tearing apart money or burning money? And it goes away. That'd be ridiculous. And men, you're not going to beat on your wife because you don't want to cause a problem with the baby or cause miscarriage. So, excuse me. So this will help marriages. Women, you're not going to get beaten as much. Yay. See, it's a win-win in addition to everything else. So these are issues that are prevalent in Ireland, but kind of prevalent in today's society too, to some degree. Okay? So those are just other little things. Not huge, gigantic change the way Ireland is things, but yet it's still something that is mentioned because, hey, this is a perk as well. So he's thinking. He's thinking. The math on the right-hand column, around in the purple text there, it says about 200,000 couples whose wives are, there's the term, breeders, from which number I subtract 30,000 couples who are able to maintain their own children. Okay, so that's 170,000 babies that can't be cared for. And let's just subtract another 50,000 for those women who miscarry or the children die by accident. What nowadays, SIDS, sudden infant death syndrome, that type of thing. So we're down to 120,000. 120,000. I just love the numbers, how he breaks. See, I love baseball. And baseball is all about numbers. And you can preach somebody's greatness or their horrendousness, I guess, if that's a way to say it, based solely on numbers. And things can make sense to you if you just break it down. And so we break it down like, well, how many people are in the country? Well, there's a 5 million. And we get it down to, there's 120,000 babies that can't be cared for each year. Now, what do we do with them? And that's really the central theme. And that's where he takes it off and goes from there. Bottom of the page there. I am assured by our merchants that a boy or a girl before 12 years old is no saleable commodity. And even when they come to this age, they will not yield above 3 pounds, or 3 pounds and a half a crown at most on the exchange, which cannot turn to accident either to the parents or the kingdom, that the charge of nutriment and rags having been at least 4 times. So whatever it costs, whatever you would sell it for when they get older, you've already spent 3 or 4 times that just to get them to that stage. And so by getting them older and older, you're actually not going to be making as much money. Do you see how that's playing out? And so you got to get rid of them when you haven't put much money into it. Have you already stopped thinking about them as babies and as livestock in a ways to make money? Maybe to some degree, and then you question whether you're sick or not. Okay? next page there, he goes into greater detail. Before he even gets into the big problems of things, he talks about how it can be prepared, how things can be cooked, how they can be exported and sold. And, we've read books and we know people who have traveled who, they've taken some kids and it's beautiful. Wonderful. It's like ratatouille. Everything's just sweet. It's awesome. Okay? And so he's trying to get people to think, well, if we can look past the fact that it's kids, fine. Have you guys ever had any crazy stuff to eat? I'm not one to experiment with my foods at all. But, in other countries, Far East and stuff, dog is readily normal. Would you have a problem chowing down on your dog? Well, not necessarily eating your dog, but what if you're grilling dog and your dog's sitting there right next to you? That would be weird. Pig intestines would be something that would be quite gross. Quite gross. But other cultures, so once you can get past the fact about how gross something is, okay, and if they can cook it in a certain way, you might be able to convince yourself that it's actually okay. I love the bottom of this column here, where it starts talking about the numbers, because it's 123,000 or 120,000 kids. It's not divided equally, boys and girls and all that, but they decide, and they break it down almost, and I'm no farmer, but I imagine you have to break it down when you're thinning out your herd and stuff. You don't need as many men as you do women, right? Right? Okay. Why do you think that in Lion King there's just one man? Because all of those are his women. Okay. He can breed for all of them. You don't need to have a harmonious marriage to, 1 and 1 and 1, that type of thing. So he says, one male will be sufficient to serve 4 females, that the remaining 100,000 may at a year old be offered in sale to the persons of quality and fortune through the kingdom, always advising the mother to let them suck plentifully of the last month so as to render them plump and fat for a good table. So pork them up, right? Pork them up. You want to get them fat. Plus, if you sell them by the pound, don't you want them heavier? More to eat? Price per pound and all of that. And a child will make 2 dishes at an entertainment for friends, and talk about being seasoned with a little pepper or salt, and it's good boiled, and yeah. Now us nowadays, we're like, man, that is sick. We have these stories about cannibals or people dismembering bodies, and it's just gross. But he's not really saying we should do this. Okay? But he says at the end, don't tell me about any other proposal. Don't tell me about anything else unless it can do this. But that's his point. Don't tell me about these other things, these things that we can really do, that we can actually do, but we're not doing. That's where the frustration is. And so he's challenging. Who is this for? Lawmakers, people who can, rabble-rouse and create situations to correct the situation. Okay? It's not just for the common people, because they're living it. So all of those ideas that we'll see in the next page about, changing and taxing and doing all these things, that's something that needs to be addressed by people who can. Down a little bit, I grant that this food will be somewhat dear and therefore very proper for landlords who, as they have already devoured most of the parents, seem to have the best title to the children. Now, have they eaten their tenants? No. But remember, they're, raking them across the coals for the money. And they pretty much eaten and devoured them anyways. They might as well have the kids. And so you see it's a little snide comment here, a little jab at the English and such. Infant's flesh will be in season throughout the year, but more plentiful in March and a little before and after. For we are told by a grave author, an eminent French physician, that fish being a prolific diet, there are more children born in Roman Catholic countries about 9 months after Lent than in any other season. Can you think about that? Isn't that a little humorous? 9 months after Lent. Lent, typically people give up stuff, right? It's our sacrifice, that type of thing, right? And so what are they alluding to as being given up for this Lent? I think we can all guess. Do you remember the ice storm a couple years ago? Yeah. Okay? It knocked out a bunch of power for a long time over the holidays. Well, there were articles in the paper come August and September of that month, or that year, talking about how the DuPont hospital and all the other hospitals are overcrowded. what was going on when the power was out and they had nothing else to do. That happens. Me, I'm a blizzard of 1978 baby. Or 77. It was 77 because I was born September of 78. Okay, you see how it works. Okay, and so that's why he doesn't call he doesn't cause a huge stir as a focal point, but again, it's a little subtle jab. And also, it's a jab at the Roman Catholics, who is a big, they're having big problems at this time with Catholicism and such. And so he goes, not only will we be eating babies and solving all these other, but we're going to be eating a lot of, he calls them papal babies. Papal, Pope, Roman Catholic babies. And so we'll be getting rid of the Catholics too. You see how that's working out? And he doesn't spend a lot of time on. That's what's with the beauty of the voice and the word choice. Something so small within the greater scope of these pages, something so small is just another little, a jab in their back, twisting of the knife. Okay? And so he's saying we have a problem with this religion and with the Catholics, Catholicism. We have these problems, with the landlords, and he's just twisting the knife a little bit more. Yeah, on 569, he's talking about that, the mother, she will have 8 shillings net profit and be fit for work till she produces another child. So the women, when they're at home, they're taking care of the baby in order to sell it. And then they can go and have a job until they're ready to have another baby. And so women can be productive and be producing and bringing money into the household. Those who are more thrifty, as I must confess, the times require. So the times require because we are kind of poor people. Look at what else we can do to the bodies. We may flay the carcass, the skin of which artificially dressed will make admirable gloves for ladies and summer boots. So we can use the skin too. Not just the meat and not just the food. Now we're being resourceful. And what can we do with all this meat and all of these goods? We can sell them or we can export them. And we can control the price. And that money can come into us and help our economy. Okay, are we kind of seeing this play out? All right, so he goes into a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more there. But you picked up on that. Page 570. Here's where he kind of goes into his listing, where he goes, I have too long digressed, and therefore shall return to my subject. I think the advantages by the proposal which I have made are obvious and many, as well as of the highest importance. For first, as I have already observed, it would greatly lessen the number of papists, what I just mentioned a little bit ago, taking care of a lot of the Roman Catholics, as our most dangerous enemies, talking about that, and secondly, talking about the poorer tenants will have something valuable of their own and help to pay their landlord's rent. Thirdly, the nation's stock will thereby increase 50,000 pounds per annum. So we'll have all of this, surplus that we are way down as of the last however many years. The constant breeders for 4, 5, 6, 7, it just goes on, and there are just tons of other advantages. Here is an awesome thing, and if you don't get anything else of it, notice his argument. When you have an argument, you make your case. Do you totally ignore the counterpoint, or do you address it? You address it. And that's what he does on this next page. He goes, I can think of no objection that will possibly be raised against this proposal unless it should be urged that the number of people will be thereby lessened in the kingdom, meaning that we will eat ourselves out of numbers, but with enough breeders, and we should be able to keep our population going and stuff. He goes, that I calculate my remedy for this one individual kingdom of Ireland, and for no other that ever was, is, or I think ever can be upon earth. So this might not work for another country. I'm just saying that this is just perfect for us, for Ireland, the numbers, our problems, our situations. This might not relate to Egypt, South Africa, all of those other places around the world, some of which they don't even know exists at this time. But this solely just works for us. Therefore, here's where it gets important. Therefore, let no man talk to me of other expedients, of taxing our absentees at 5 shillings a pound, of using neither clothes nor household furniture except what is of our own growth and manufacture. So stop buying foreign goods. strictly buying what's here. And these are all things that they should do, that they can do. But the common people don't really have that authority. It needs to be the lawmakers and the people in charge to say, we are taxing you 5 shillings on every pound. We will not be importing from you anymore. Okay? We are going to be exporting. All right, so they need somebody to take charge. And there's a ton of others, other things going on right there. So very important, because we have that point, counterpoint, that's very, very key. And remember I told you the title is A Modest Proposal is almost satirical in nature, because he thinks that his proposal is the best. It is the best. Don't tell me about all these other things that don't work. Okay, so we can see that this is a wonderful, wonderful example of satire. And he says, therefore I repeat, let no man talk to me of these and the like expedients, till he hath at least some glimpse of hope that there will ever be some hearty and sincere attempt to put them in practice, to put their, not just say it. How many times you guys may not have watched a ton of election stuff over your life, but this year, a lot of promises are made. A lot of things are said. And a lot of things are forgotten once they get to office. People say pretty much anything to get elected. I mean, that's the common belief, right? And so he goes, I don't want to hear anything about that. I don't want a politician just talking until they have a plan to put this in place, to get it through Congress and through the Senate or whatever they have, and be good for the country. Where's that? And lastly, that very last column, first, as things now stand, how they will be able to find food and raiment? I haven't seen that word before. Raiment for 100,000 useless mouths and backs. So these are the situations that need addressed, folks. And I don't want to hear about it unless you have a plan. First, I want these 100,000 mouths fed, these poor mouths. How are you planning to feed them each year? Secondly, there being around million of creatures in human figure throughout this kingdom, whose whole subsistence put into a common stock would leave them in debt 2 millions of pounds per shilling. So we have a lot of people, and our economy stinks, and a lot of people are in debt. Pretty much everybody's in debt. So these are situations and things that you need to figure out now. In conclusion, down there at the bottom, just in case anybody thinks that I, Jonathan Swift, am a conniving person, who I have tons of babies on the way or a lot of mistresses, so I'm going to have a lot of kids. We don't, my kids are past sale. They're not going to be worth anything, and my wife and I aren't going to make any more kids. So he makes a wonderful argument from start to finish. These are our problems. These are our issues. These are how we can address them. Don't tell me about doing these and these, which realistically, those would be good ideas to do. And I don't want to hear anything unless you can have a plan for these problems. Don't talk to me about it. And just in case you think that I am trying to make some money on this deal and me be a sneaky politician, I have nothing to gain for it outside of Ireland has something to gain. Okay? So think back to this piece for satire. Think back to Jonathan Swift, Modest Proposal. You probably remember the fact that it's dead babies and eating babies and stuff a lot. But really think about the subtext of it and what he really means and how he goes about doing it. Okay?